Chaos erupts at a distribution site in western Palestinian Rafah, overseen by the U.S. security company and amid severe overcrowding and pushing. Saudi Arabia confirms Dua al-Hajj moon sighting, Eid al-Adha set for June 6th. And Lebanese Defense Minister Michel Mnassa meets the UN Humanitarian Coordinator Amran Riza to discuss coordination with the UN agencies, especially UNIFIL. You're watching Q News. I'm Hani Saif and this is our news bulletin. A chaotic scene has unfolded at an aid distribution site in the Palestinian Rafah, managed by a U.S. security company, due to severe overcrowding and pushing. Palestinians in southern Gaza rushed to receive some of the first aid deliveries in months, as severe shortages continue under a total blockade. According to Israeli military radio, U.S. personnel fired shots into the air to disperse crowds. An Israeli security source stated that Israel is not involved in the situation on the ground in Rafah. The Palestinian Foreign Ministry has accused Israel of fabricating tensions in the occupied West Bank to justify its annexation plans. In a statement, the ministry urged the U.S. and international community to take immediate action to stop what it described as crimes of genocide, displacement, and annexation, and to pressure Israel to comply with international law. It warned that failure to act would endanger the viability of a two-state solution and threaten broader regional stability. President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has strongly condemned Israel's recent attacks on civilian sites in Gaza as abhorrent. In a call with Jordan's King Abdullah II, she highlighted the deadly impact on civilian infrastructure, including a school sheltering displaced Palestinian families, resulting in civilian casualties, including children. Ireland's cabinet will consider a bill to ban imports of goods from Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem, deemed illegal under international law. Prime Minister Michael Martin emphasized the urgent need for global pressure on Israel to end the ongoing conflict. German Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul has expressed shock at the situation in Gaza, highlighting the severe shortages of food and medicine. He emphasized that Germany's fight against anti-Semitism and support for Israel's security should not be used to justify the ongoing conflict. Wadephul warned that Germany must carefully consider its next steps without providing specifics. The UN has called for the immediate reopening of all crossings into Gaza, emphasizing the urgent need for a secure environment and faster clearance of emergency supplies. Jens Larke, spokesperson for the UN Humanitarian Office, dismissed recent claims by the US-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation about aid distribution as a distraction, noting no confirmation of their operations on the ground. He criticized Israeli restrictions on aid, saying the limited supplies allowed in are cherry-picked and insufficient to meet the actual needs. UNRWA spokeswoman Juliet Toma confirmed that UN agencies have no information about the GHF's aid deliveries and stressed that Gaza requires at least 500 to 600 trucks daily with food, medicine, vaccines, fuel, water and other essentials to support its population. UNRWA Chief Philippe Lazzarini has said Israel has yet to provide evidence supporting its accusations against the agency. Israel accused UNRWA staff of involvement in Hamas's October 7, 2023 attack and banned the agency from operating in Palestinian territories and Israel. Lazzarini warned that these unsubstantiated claims endanger staff lives and damage the agency's reputation, stressing the need for evidence and due process. And for further analysis, we now move to Hela Al-Hamalawi in our newsroom. Hela.
Thank you very much, Hani. And for further analysis on the matter, Ahmed Fattouh, Fatah spokesperson, join us from Ramallah. Welcome to Q News, sir. Now, how does the blockade and the restrictions on aid impact the overall humanitarian situation in Gaza, including, of course, health, food security, and infrastructure?
Well, it's devastating, of course, after 90 days of full blockade of all kind of entry for food or medicine to Gaza. It is a catastrophic, inhumane situation. Gaza not only lacks food and clean water and fuel, it lacks also many medical instruments that they need and medicines for the patients who suffer from chronic diseases, who are dying every day because of Israel blockade to these crucial items. Of course, the catastrophe is expanding each day without the immediate intervention. The world is speaking up. They need to act. And that action is by sanctioning Israel, as it's been discussed in the EU right now and in many other places, because Israel clearly does not abide to the international law, to the humanitarian catastrophe that's happening in Gaza right now. That 90 days of blockade is following a 20 months of destruction and genocide that destroyed farms, destroyed factories, destroyed bakeries, destroyed all sorts of life. 93% of Gaza is fully destroyed. 95% of Gaza is not suitable for farming because of these bombs that has elements of radiation and a lot of polluting the environment, which crippled farming and all kind of products in Gaza. So we are talking a very dire situation that requires immediate flooding of aid, not to provide instrumentalized aid that aims to push a colonial Israeli ambition by Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which apparently is working for only pushing forward the transfer of the Palestinians from the north to the south in the aim to serve the aim of the Israeli to push the Palestinians out of Gaza to Sinai Desert or to Ramon Airport, so what they call the voluntary immigration, which is of course not voluntary because it's at the point of the gun. So the world needs to be careful of what Israel is doing.
Exactly. So what are the implications of selective, or if we may use the expression cherry-picked aid being allowed into Gaza on the effectiveness and fairness of humanitarian assistance?
You know, the CEO of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation resigned, and he resigned saying that this is not according to the humanitarian principles. That has a clear indication that what this foundation is doing has nothing to do to help and aid the devastated 2 million human beings in Gaza. That selected aid, as said by the UN and many others, reflects that they actually is just for the show, just for the image, to show the international community that they are allowing some aid, but they are not sincere in their that aid. Of course, that's refused. Any aid must be through the internationally recognized bodies that are neutral, that are independent, and not, you know, followed by the colonials, the occupations, not the perpetrators, who are managing this aid. That is a catastrophe by itself. By the way, they are providing 4 points of distribution in the south for 2 million hungry human beings who are wandering the street looking for bread. That is a catastrophe. 2 million will go to only 4 points of distribution. How that is not a lack of thinking. That is deliberate humiliation of the Palestinian people to cause that scene.
So how might the lack of evidence from Israel regarding its accusations against UNRWA affect the agency's operations, since you were talking about that such delivery must be conducted by internationally recognized organizations?
Israel from ever fighting UNRWA. This is not new news. When Israel started to fight UNRWA 10 years ago, there was no October 7. There was no hostages. Israel is going to keep lying and pushing lies, which has been investigated and appear to be false. Now, what's excuses that? And by the way, what about the UNRWA closing the UNRWA institution in Jerusalem? How does closing schools in Jerusalem actually, fulfill their claims that they are, have some what they claim combatants in Gaza, which appear to be false? So obviously, as evident, Israel is doing this to cripple the Palestinian aid and to cripple the aid for refugees, to push for the agenda of ethnic cleansing and mass expulsion of the Palestinian people. That will not work because the Palestinian people are rooted in this land and we are not leaving. If they imagine that they could repeat 1948, that is an illusion. And the world now is waking up, but it needs to act decisively and swiftly. Because Israel is apparently running away from peace, running away from the ceasefire, and they have exhausted all excuses, and they have no excuses at all of what are they doing. UNRWA must return and be allowed to function in Gaza and all of occupied Palestinian territories, as well as in the refugees outside Palestine. And the aid must be through international independent institutions, not through the occupation and the United States, the backer and sponsor of that occupation, gates.
So in light of the humanitarian crisis, what are the critical steps needed to ensure that aid reaches the residents of Gaza effectively and promptly?
As I told you, it needs to be within the international recognized body that is neutral and independent, and a massive entry of aid, not a few trucks here and there. And that, as you reported, needs at least 500 trucks a day. I think in such a critical situation, it needs more than 500, about 10,000 trucks a day if we could. And that should be from the north and the south. Israel is closing Rafah, is closing Karm Abu Salim in the north. That all need to be open in front of the international humanitarian bodies to allow the entry food from all corners of Gaza to feed and revive the deprived Palestinian people in Gaza. That Gaza Foundation aid must be confronted and must be sanctioned, as well as Israel must be sanctioned for violating clearly, evidently, the international humanitarian law and all our moral and legal code.
Well, that was Mr. Ahmed Fattouh, Fatah spokesperson, joining us from Ramallah. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here on Q News. Now we go back to Hani Saif in our studio. To you.
Thank you, Hela. The Iraqi government has condemned what it called Israel's painful starvation policy in Gaza, accusing it of using hunger as a weapon against Palestinians. In a statement, Iraq urged the international community to exert maximum pressure on Israel to allow humanitarian aid into the besieged enclave, saying Israel is disregarding all humanitarian and legal norms. As Israel's blockade nears 3 months, the World Food Programme recently warned that over 70,000 children in Gaza are suffering from severe malnutrition. Moving on to Saudi Arabia, where the Saudi state TV has announced the sighting of the Dhul Hijjah crescent at the Tumer Observatory. As a result, Wednesday will mark the first day of Dhul Hijjah, and Eid al-Adha will be observed on Friday, June 6th. The UAE has already sighted the crescent, and Indonesia and Malaysia have announced Eid dates. In India, Eid will be observed a day after Saudi Arabia, falling on June 7th in Saudi Arabia. Eid will be on June 8th in India. Moving on, Egypt and the United States deepen strategic ties, emphasizing growth, investment, and regional cooperation at a pivotal forum.
At the 2025 U.S.-Egypt Policy Leaders Forum in Cairo, senior Egyptian and U.S. officials reaffirmed their strategic partnership, highlighting strengthened cooperation in trade, investment, and regional diplomacy amid growing geopolitical challenges. The event gathered top officials, diplomats, and business leaders to explore new economic opportunities and trilateral cooperation, particularly in Africa.
The president of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is here, and she managed to bring with her 50 American companies' interest in the Egyptian market.
Over 2 days of discussions, the forum emphasized Egypt's pivotal role as a regional hub linking Africa, Asia, and the Americas. Participants highlighted ongoing efforts to foster sustainable trade, infrastructure projects, and technological innovation aimed at boosting mutual economic growth.
And I think it's opening up huge opportunities for American companies to consider Egypt as a manufacturing hub.
The forum also reviewed frameworks that have laid the ground for collaboration. These firms collectively represent billions in investment and span vital sectors.
This is a really timely forum because Egypt has undertaken structural reforms, but it also has an opportunity to lay out the plans for the future. So we are here to listen, learn, and discuss.
Despite challenges, officials confirmed Egypt's macroeconomic stability and openness to international investment.
So what we see is a lot of commercial trade agreements between Egypt and the African continent, Egypt in the Middle East and beyond. And that really, I think, excites U.S. companies because they think about Egypt as a hub, as a catalyst to come here to Egypt, and then you can trade and export to those countries through those trade agreements and have that benefit.
The forum focused on advancing reforms to improve Egypt's business environment and boost public-private partnerships. It concluded with a renewed commitment to expanding cooperation in innovation, infrastructure, and sustainable development, highlighting Egypt's role as a strategic gateway, connecting continents and creating cross-border opportunities.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين. وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
Lebanese Defense Minister Michel Manassa has met UN Humanitarian Coordinator Imran Riza to discuss ongoing coordination with UN agencies, especially UNIFIL. Manassa stressed the importance of renewing UNIFIL's mandate in August without changes to maintain security in South Lebanon. The meeting also addressed the need for a clear plan for Syrian refugees' return and broader security measures along the Lebanese-Syrian frontier. Lebanese army vehicles alongside the Intelligence Directorate and Engineering Regiment bulldozers have moved to Krum al-Marah east of Mais al-Jabal to remove an earthen barrier Israel built on Lebanese land. The Israeli force that advanced into Krum al-Marah at dawn has withdrawn after constructing the berm and seizing dozens of meters of Lebanese territory. Moving on, Israeli ground forces, accompanied by 2 military bulldozers, have entered the eastern outskirts of Mais al-Jabal in Lebanon's Marjayoun district. According to Lebanon's news agency, the bulldozers carried out excavation work near the border village. The incursion comes amid rising tensions, as UN figures indicate that over 70 civilians in Lebanon have been killed in Israeli attacks since a ceasefire was announced on November 27th. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has denounced Ukrainian attacks on Russian territory, saying they undermine efforts towards a peaceful resolution of the conflict. The remarks come amid escalating drone warfare, with both sides launching swarms of drones. Russia's defense ministry reported downing 99 Ukrainian drones overnight. Ukraine, in turn, was hit by 60 Russian drones, wounding several people, according to Kiev officials. The attack marked a drop in intensity following 3 nights of heavy Russian bombardments. Fierce fighting continues along key areas of the front. Russian forces have captured the village of Stara Mykolaiivka in Ukraine's eastern Donetsk region. According to a defense ministry statement, Russian forces captured the village of Stara Mykolaiivka, about 15 kilometers west of the industrial city of Torsk, which Moscow claimed it captured in early February. The village is also situated about 37 kilometers east of the city of Pokrovsk, a key front in Russia's offensive actions in eastern Ukraine. The city serves as a critical logistics hub for Ukraine's military in the region, which shares a border with Russia. China has firmly denied claims that it is supplying military aid to Russia, following Ukrainian allegations that Chinese products are being used in Russian defense factories. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said that China has never provided lethal weapons to any parties to the conflict in Ukraine and strictly regulates dual-use items. Responding to statements from Ukraine's foreign intelligence chief, who accused China of supplying tools, gunpowder and other goods to 20 Russian military plants, Mao dismissed the claims as groundless accusations and political manipulation. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has criticized German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, saying Merz's recent comments suggest that Western powers had secretly approved long-range Ukrainian strikes into Russian territory long ago. Merz stated there were no longer any range restrictions on weapons supplied to Ukraine by countries including Germany, the UK, France and the US. Lavrov claimed this reflects poorly on the current leadership in Europe, implying the decision had been concealed until now. He also reacted to recent comments from US President Donald Trump, suggesting Trump was emotional over what Lavrov described as European sabotage of past peace efforts in Ukraine. Russia has started major naval drills in the Baltic Sea. The drills involve a substantial force of 20 warships, 3,000 troops and air support, according to the Baltic Fleet of Russia. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi delivered a sharp warning to Pakistan on Monday, declaring his bullet is ready if the neighboring country fails to choose the path of peace. Speaking in Gujarat, Modi emphasized his government's zero-tolerance stance on militancy following the deadliest cross-border clashes in decades. The renewed violence began after a militant attack on April 22nd in Indian-administered Kashmir killed 26 people, most of them Indian tourists. New Delhi blamed Pakistan-backed militants for the assault, a claim Islamabad strongly denied.
पाकिस्तान को आतंक की बीमारी से मुक्त करने के लिए
These are all the news we have for now, but here's a reminder of today's main stories. Chaos erupts at aid distribution site in western Palestinian Rafah, overseen by a US security company amid severe overcrowding and pushing. Saudi Arabia confirms the Hijjah moon sighting. Eid al-Adha is set for June 6th. And Lebanese Defense Minister Michel Manassa meets UN Humanitarian Coordinator Imran Riza to discuss coordination with the UN agencies, especially UNIFIL. This concludes our news bulletin for now, but please don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at QNewsEGY to stay informed. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.